Good evening. I wanted to give some thoughts on some of the quotes I've already heard in the Dublin discussions with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, with Douglas Murray being the moderator. I'm so excited to find these discussions, and I'm a little bit behind the times here. I wish I had seen these right when they came out. Life has just been so busy. I'm only finally getting around to them right now. I found it interesting that they started off the top in talking about how we all know what straw men are, which I was happy to hear. Straw men arguments are used a lot more than people realize. So I hope it's as clear as Douglas Murray was saying in the beginning, that people understand what those are. Anyway, he wanted to start the two off, Sam and Jordan, with steel manning the other's arguments. And I love that because it's trying to give in as fair a view as you can, the views of the other person that you were discussing with. So Sam went first, and I just wanted to share a couple thoughts on some quotes from Sam on that. Sam spoke about both of them having a common project. He says, "We're both concerned to understand how to live lives worth living." And I might come back to that a few times here, because to me, I just love how it started off with this, because there's a lot right there, just that alone, that we all should be thinking about. Those that are concerned about things being talked about in these discussions that are going the world over now, starting in Canada, now in Dublin. I just love it. I'll come back to that though. Before that though, let me jump back one more thing too. He says there's an immense amount of goodwill here, and he's talking between he and Jordan. It's true on stage and off stage, and we're all trying to refine our beliefs together in conversation. None of us view this as a debate, though we might stridently disagree with one another. So he's really trying to give off this image of not wanting to be in a debate with Jordan, that they're really just discussing. It's very congenial overall. So then we go back to when he says we're both concerned, this is Sam again, we're both concerned to understand how to live lives worth living, and how we can do this individually, Sam continues, and how we can build societies that safeguard this project for millions of people attempting to do this in their diverse ways. What is the relationship? He says it brings up many questions, like what is the relationship between facts and values, for instance, or science and spiritual experience or ethical lives? And we have for the moment differing answers to these questions. I found that interesting, that we have for the moment differing answers to the questions. He says, Jordan is concerned that I, in my allergy to religion, insufficiently value the power of stories in general, and religious stories in particular. There's something more than just nakedly engaging with facts as they are. We don't simply come into contact with reality. We have to interpret reality, interpret it through our senses and with our brains, obviously. But you need frameworks, and as Jordan would say, stories with which to do that. You don't get facts in the raw. And Jordan believes that because my purpose is so often is to counter what I view as the dangerous dogmas within religion, that I ignore the power and even necessity of certain kinds of stories and certain ways of thinking about the world and our situation in the world, that not only bring many, many millions and even billions of people immense value, are in fact necessary for anyone, however rational, to build a society where all of our well-being can be conserved. So I think, in brief, that this is Jordan's concern about me. And that's just within the first 5 minutes, 5 minutes and 23 seconds or so of this video. And I'm going to take just this in chunks. Just some thoughts worth unpacking, because a lot of these videos, if you watch them, pay close attention to the beginnings of them and then how they wrap up. And then, of course, the underlying common current theme throughout. Of course, this is what I try to do. And I think this is, first of all, if I could just say, these types of discussions are of immense value. And I just wanted to say that when someone is considering discussing how to understand how to live lives worth living, it kind of is a little bit presumptuous, perhaps. It kind of assumes quite a bit there. I think everyone that lives on the planet is equally concerned about how to live lives worth living, because that's literally what people are doing every single day. And it's probably safe to assume that all of them want to have lives worth living, and that they are concerned about that, and that within their limitations and within the freedoms afforded to each of us, that we each get to choose that best path to living a life worth living. Curious wording there. And so there's that. I'm not sure that it's such a mystery. I guess, is anyone else there with me on that? Is it such a mystery that we're coming together world over? And man, I am all about the philosophy. I love the moral philosophy stuff. I love discussing beliefs, religions, ideas. It's all fascinating to me. So don't misunderstand. But I just thought that was a curious line, that we're all concerned how to understand how to have lives worth living. So anyway, moving on. How can we do this individually, and how can we build societies that safeguard this project for millions of people attempting to do this in their diverse ways? And again, I would just dare say that's kind of what I think people are doing world over. There's communities across the continents of this beautiful earth, and there have been for millennia people and societies and civilized countries, as they come into their or uncivilized coming into their more civilized ways, how people live out their lives is all in a goal here to make better lives. Some countries seem to be a little slower in that regard. Some countries have seemed to kind of lead the way in other regards, and we're currently living in a time where a lot of countries are having to learn the very hard way how certain ideas play out. When you've got people on both sides kind of really, yelling and screaming, basically, hollering here and there about do this, don't do that, and you can't do all of the things. So communities and societies pick ones to go with. They make their votes, they do their things, and then you see the fallout, or you see the growth. Anyway, jumping back here to this real quick, building societies. I guess, again, just keep this all in mind as I move forward. So there's this talk of wanting to have lives worth living, and how to help people in their own individual communities and societies, how to build those societies to safeguard that idea. I'm a tiny bit confused by that. Moving on. And then here we go. So how we do this individually, and then it does mention that people do it in diverse ways. Again, that's what they're doing. What's the relationship between facts and values, for instance, or science and spiritual experience? I think that we're all interested in facts. You have to be interested in facts if you're going to live life at all. We all live our lives as if facts rule the day. Laws of nature, laws of logic, these things kind of dictate our lives. we've all known of people who buck up against realities of life, or logical things, rational things. It's a risky way to be when you fight up against those just general ideas. If you do X, you get this other thing. You know, it's a cause and effect world that we live in. So I'm not sure that, again, that there's such a mystery there. But we would all esteem facts and values. We all esteem science. I very much believe that on all the sides here. Spiritual experience is a little bit more subjective and very personal to each person. And how we live ethical lives, that's a choice we all have too. Some people do seek help in how to maybe further themselves in those things. And maybe there are people seeking help from Sam and Jordan in this regard, but I'm not positive on that for sure. But anyway, they seem to kind of be setting this up that they, or at least Sam anyway at this point, is saying that this is what he's trying to do. At least to some degree. That's what he's kind of stating here. And then Sam says, we have, for the moment, differing answers to these questions. For the moment, I mean, and I'm going to guess ongoing, is it important for someone who's an ardent atheist and someone maybe who isn't? Do they have to come to a consensus? And let me back up. Don't get me wrong. Of course, gosh, how great and idealistic it would be if we were all on the same page. I'm just talking about just reality here, though, for a moment. Unless one side comes over to the other, it's likely not going to happen. And I just wanted us to be cautioned by the idea that we do all need to come to a consensus, as if there's one right way. That people who actually, hear me out here, that actually have diametrically opposing views, that they have to come to a consensus until one just gives in to the other one. I'm not sure that that's what is important here. And I say that, and it might sound kind of a curious thing to say, but I kind of feel sometimes like that's what these sorts of discussions are going for. There's this, it's kind of an undercurrent. So without going further into that right now, let me just back off of that for a moment. Just kind of bear it in mind. Keep it in the back of your mind there for a moment. Next point, Jordan is concerned, this is Sam, Jordan is concerned that I, in my allergy to religion, insufficiently value the power of stories in general and religious stories in particular. Okay, and so this is where I do want to talk about this again. I'm a little bit alarmed that we've got these two great thinkers, or great people that love to think about these things, that they're talking kind of like that someone can say, that Sam can say at the outset that he has an allergy to religion. It almost sounded like that's what Sam would even say of himself, that he even has an allergy to religion. And if you listen to him, you will observe that probably isn't too far off base. I do just want to say to that, I just think it's a little too much. It's a little over the top. It's as if to say it's okay to just throw it out there that we're going to say it's okay and esteem somebody that says they have an allergy to religion in general without clarifying anything in that regard. I know that this is not really the forum to go into details, but I dare say, again, he often gives examples of the more extreme things and then lumps all of the religions together. Generally speaking, this is what I've observed. If he could respond to me, he might say something different, but I kind of don't think so if he is in keeping with what I've seen so far. I don't think this has anything to do with the power of stories and religious stories in particular on that note about being allergic to religion. It's as if it's just another way to demean it. It's just another way to set out an assertion that he does not prefer religion, he doesn't like it. And why can't that just be what it is? He has an allergy to religion. Okay. But I just want to say that's not a view really worthy of esteeming. It's kind of putting down so many people. And there's a suggestion within that you want to help a person's allergies if you can. I don't think we need to remove the allergen in this case. I think that these words that we're throwing out, these ideas, that we need to be really careful with it. So now there's like this thing that's kind of put out there. There's an allergy to religion, and I see a lot of people kind of adopting that because I think it's attractive on other levels. When you become allergic to religion, of course you're going to feel a whole lot freer in a lot of ways because of what certain religions might dictate. I've heard enough stories, I've heard enough people, and I know enough about religions to know that it's the harder road to believe in some religions. It's a harder thing to live on the straight and narrow, and people sacrifice a lot to try to do the right thing. I think the particulars matter. Each one matters. Demeaning all religions is not good. I'll just say that. Moving on. And power of stories. Again, this is where I have concern about Jordan. I love Jordan. I mean, from what I'm learning of Jordan Peterson, a great guy. From what I've heard, he's more of he can be somewhat liberal. He's often mistaken as a conservative. I read about him. He's somewhat Christian. He would answer that he's, yes, kind of a Christian. He seems to esteem some of those values. He said that the proper answer when asked about is there a God, he said the proper answer might be no, but that he's afraid there might be. I mean, my point in saying any of that is, and those things could be wrong. I think I read some of that on Wikipedia even, because I just wanted a quick overview on what a source like that, not that it's a great source, but more of a generic quick read. As far as Jordan Peterson goes, he's not necessarily, is he the best one to be, again, this maybe isn't defending because, like Sam said, this isn't really a debate, but we don't technically have an overly intense religious person. We probably have a very strong spiritual person that esteems a lot of the different views in certain religions, and especially maybe Christianity. But I'm just saying it's not like, anyway, I just leave that at that. Jordan has certain views too that are not necessarily really conservative on that side of things and representing a certain particular religions. So stories, are these just stories? I think the real thing here is it has not been concluded whatsoever that these are just stories. But that said, the power of stories, of oral tradition that comes down through the ages is a very powerful thing. Storytelling, a very powerful thing. You can storytell things that are very true stories. So I'm going to assume the best on that for the moment. At first I wanted to say why, when you use the word story in this context of this discussion, when you're speaking with an atheist, I think the atheist is thinking of the word story as a fiction. I would dare say that Sam believes this is all just fiction, as if it's just some Greek mythology, something equivalent to just something that's been written down from long ago, even though nothing matches up to certain texts with textual criticism and whatnot. Not even Shakespeare has the proofs for it. Even though we don't doubt Shakespeare, but I'm just saying, as far as the texts and the stories go, some rank much higher and have a lot of great reasons for believing them. But moving back on through that, Jordan, I think there is absolute value in stories. And I think I know where Sam might be coming from on this. He might be just saying, we have other ways we can get, ideas about what is good and bad, that we don't need those stories. But I guess I would have to ask, why is he wanting so much to disregard the stories? And why is he so much wanting to disregard that other people esteem those stories? And why can't we talk about the particulars? Why can't we talk about a particular story and say, yikes, that one is bad. That suggestion or that teaching or that story, that is really bad. But over here, this one, these are really fair. This is a really good story. I would like to see more fairness in that from Sam Harris. Because I think there is a value and power in that. There's no reason to throw it all out. It starts to look like there's something else driving the bus when I see certain kind of things coming out over and over again from certain people. And you have to wonder, if they give an explanation, does that seem to fit the bill, to fit what is needed to explain it? In this case, I'm referring to Sam and his very strong beliefs against religion. I'm still looking for that cause and effect to make official sense. Okay, so I think, again, engaging with facts as they are, I think that we can come into contact with reality. There's a lot more than meets the eye. I think that a lot of people know this. For instance, whatever happened at the Big Bang, whatever happened in the beginning of our universe so long ago, none of us were there. So we're not there with that reality, but we can deduce a lot of things about that. We can talk about what would best explain it, and we can also come to terms within this world that we do know and see and love so well, what could explain it and what can't really explain it. We can also talk about what's most rational and reasonable, and we can also talk about what is more reasonable than another idea. Even if we don't know all the answers to all the things, you can believe in something that is the best of your options to go with. So anyway, our senses are important, our brains obviously. The dangerous dogmas, I don't think any of us want dangerous dogmas. I think, again, I would like Sam to be fair in what he constitutes a dangerous dogma without saying that all of them are bad. Nobody wants that. And it's kind of, I don't want to use the word ignorant. It's just not fair. It is kind of ignorant to say, to lump so much. I can't stand the lumping. It's just not fair. I think it's a better world, it's a more ethical life. It's a better life for all of us, since that was part of the thing in the beginning. Remember, we want to live lives worth living. It's better. It's a more positive thing to be more fair with people than to be less fair. There's a thought. It's a very simple thought, but boy, does that keep coming up with me. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor this too much more. I already have kind of beaten this part to beaten this horse more than is needed. Kind of hate that phrase. I just want to make sure there's nothing else I wanted to say within this section here. Again, talk about the millions and billions of people world over. To some degree, I think we need to leave people alone a little bit. Trust them a little bit. Maybe like share your thoughts, share your stories. I think that's what a lot are intending to do. But when you start to try to use coercive efforts through thoughts and ideas to manipulate people, I think that's a concern. And I just think at this time that we're living in, we want to be really sensitive to this, because things are getting very touch and go here, kind of a unique time that we're living in. And I think that life is precious and short and flying by, and we want to encourage each other, all of us, to be the best that we can be. If that's what Sam is attempting to do, and actually then I can get on board with that. What I don't see fitting in with that is what seems to be kind of irrational feeling about his views on religion, in an effort to try to really convince people with arguments that I don't see being made, in referring just demeaning or putting down holy books and whatnot, encouraging people to think fairly. I would respect it all so much more if I saw more fairness. So anyway, I will touch base again, and I hope to share more and think through these other things, because it's very much worth thinking about. As far as building societies, we'll come to find out more maybe what Sam means by that. That he's hoping to be more in line with him. I think that there's a lot to be learned from these, and so anyway, thanks for listening. I will be back. Take care. Bye-bye.